Et bonsoir à tout le monde et bienvenue à la 11e édition de l'Apéro Defi, une initiative de l'Institut des Cryptoactifs en collaboration avec le pôle Finance Innovation. Ce soir, on a le plaisir d'accueillir deux compatriotes d'Italie. En fait, c'est Mandelli, Michele Mandelli et Ferdinando Metrano de CheckSig. Et on va parler d'un sujet assez délicat, donc crypto custody. Il commence Michele, qui a un passé, disons, Deloitte, CBS aussi, et Ferdinando, qui a un passé par contre dans la banque, Intesa. Il était aussi compte à l'époque, je me souviens. Et, je laisse tout de suite la parole à Michele. Et since we have to switch in English now, and please don't upset if you interact a little bit with your talk, because I would like to be, quite interactive. Please.
Thank you and good evening. Is there a slide turner? Yeah. On this one. Let me check if it works. It doesn't. If you could, anyone could help me find a slide pointer that works. I'm not sure this is the one, or maybe it's off. I didn't check it. There's another one. Well, anyways, thanks for having me, Michele. Today I have a few slides that cover three main areas. The first is why we talk about custody in the crypto space. So why is custody especially relevant in the crypto space? Second point we'll go through is how actually custody works, in the sense of what are the underlying technical components that make custody possible in the crypto space. And the third point we'll go through is the process of custodying crypto assets. So we'll go through how the process that we have devised at CheckSig works, and why it is secure, and why maybe that's not even enough. So I hope this will provide you with an overview of the challenges around crypto custody. So yeah, I come from consulting. I've spent about 10 plus years in consulting, Deloitte and then at BCG. I've always been working in the banking industry though. So I feel like, in a way, like I'm a banking guy, banking process guy, banking tech guy. And then I somehow entered the Bitcoin space back in 2015, so quite a few years ago, and kind of captured me. So I joined CheckSig and Ferdinando we develop solutions for private investors and financial institutions as well. So we can actually cover the entire B2C and B2B2C space. So what is the deal with crypto custody? The first point that I like to convey to you is that custody is about both process and technology. This is not just a technological feat, it's both process and technology. So the first thing we'll go through is why we need such a setup, why we need custody, and then we'll go through the technology and the process. All right. So the challenge of secure custody. First, there's no animation, but that's fine, okay. First, what is Bitcoin? Why do I start from what is Bitcoin? Because if we understand the nature of the asset, then you can understand why the custody is so challenging, right? And why am I talking about Bitcoin? Well, because it was the first crypto asset, and if you understand how Bitcoin works, you can easily apply that to other assets. It's not really exactly the same, but you get the idea, right? So what is Bitcoin? And apologies, this is a barely accurate definition of Bitcoin. If you come up with a definition of Bitcoin, there's at least 10 people in the audience that usually tell you this definition is not accurate. So I will tell you first, this definition is not accurate, but is accurate enough for our purposes right now. I will just go through this one. So Bitcoin is a digital artifact inherently limited in quantity. What does that mean? Means that it's a scarce asset, it's a digital asset, it's transferable in a way, but it's not duplicable. So Ferdinando always says this, and I guess you might have this in your presentation as well, Ferdinando. But when I send an attachment in an email, I'm not sending you a file, I'm duplicating something, I will keep a copy and you'll get a copy as well. But if that digital artifact has to be money or wealth, I cannot copy that. I need to transfer that to you. And I should not retain a copy of that. Otherwise, I will inflate the monetary base, right? And it's freely transferable without intermediaries. Freely transferable sounds great. It means that I can send my digital wealth to anyone in the world without relying on anyone. But it's also risky, right? Because it means that this is a bearer instrument. So it's sort of like cash. If I have it in my pocket, I'll give it to you. That's a final transaction. If I have it in my pocket and you take it from me, it's gone. I cannot get it back. If I transfer euro with my bank with a wire transfer, that can be rolled back at any point in time, right? But not with Bitcoin. If the asset gets transferred on the blockchain, it's gone. I might be able to track it. I might be able to monitor where it has gone. I might be able to blacklist some addresses, but it's gone. I cannot get it back. So it's a big issue, right? So let's compare for a second Bitcoin with another bearer asset, which is historically very relevant, which is gold, physical gold, right? 20,000, 30,000 years of history, the humanity has used gold as a store of value and a way to transact, right? And it's a physical asset and it's a bearer instrument. So I can have it, I can hold it, I can keep it, I can hide it. Nowadays, it's not that common. I don't know if does any of you have gold, like physical gold, like coins or ingots or, yeah? Who has Bitcoin? Does any of you have Bitcoin? Yeah, so a few of you, okay. So what's the difference between physical gold and Bitcoin? If we want to draw a comparison, right? From a security standpoint, I'm not talking about the monetary point of view here, just for a security standpoint. Well, the difference is that with gold, you can counterfeit it, and it's difficult to say. If I give you an ingot, a coin, that might be counterfeit. With Bitcoin, if I give you a Bitcoin, you know that's actual, true, genuine Bitcoin, which is good. So there was a big scandal a few months ago. One of the largest central banks, I think that was Bank of England, discovered that a bunch of ingots, gold bars from China were actually fake, were actually deposited, and they were tungsten covered with gold. So tungsten has the same density as gold, so they actually look original, and it was kind of hard to assay, and they found out later on. With Bitcoin, that cannot happen. It's kind of difficult to partition gold, so it's super malleable, so you can, shave it in super tiny to the atom thin layers. But if I need to go, let's say, to a restaurant and I want to pay in gold, it's kind of difficult to get the exact amount I need to pay, right? While with Bitcoin, you can actually cut it down and divide it to 10 to the minus 8, so super, super tiny fractions to tens or thousands of a cent of euro. It's actually easy to launder gold. You just melt it and you make a new bar out of it. So if you have jewelry, you have stolen gold, you just melt it down. Bitcoin is kind of harder to launder. This comes as a surprise usually. So everyone is convinced that Bitcoin is super easy to launder. That is not true. So if you steal Bitcoin, that Bitcoin is gone, but we can actually track it on the blockchain and it gets blacklisted, and no exchange, no reputable exchange will accept those Bitcoin as a payment or as a deposit. So it's kind of tainted, we could say. So it's actually harder to launder Bitcoin than it is to launder gold, but Bitcoin has a few drawbacks. So first thing is that gold is difficult to hide physically, so you need to hide it somewhere, while Bitcoin is easy to hide. I just need to remember something or have something noted down, and I have control over my Bitcoin, which makes it great if you're a Venezuelan, if you're Chinese, if you're let's say under a regime in Cuba, whatever. This is great. I can easily hide my wealth. But also, it means that if it's hidden by a bad actor, it's kind of difficult to get it back. So you cannot actually seize Bitcoin. You can you can threaten the guy that has Bitcoin into giving it to you, but you cannot actually seize it yourself. While if I have physical gold, I will just send 1,000 men into a place and go through every single item in that house until I find a physical gold bar. Gold is difficult to move around. It's expensive, it's heavy, it's kind of difficult. If you want to move big amounts, of course. I'm not talking about my gold ring here, I'm talking about wealth. So tens of millions, not easy to move around. If I were to rob Fort Knox, the challenge is not to break into Fort Knox. The challenge is to escape with the gold, because I would need, trucks to do that. If I break into a digital Fort Knox in a way, well, escaping with the digital gold is much easier because I don't need trucks to do that. I just need to do that, and then I can easily transport those Bitcoin away. And with Bitcoin, you can be hacked remotely. So someone sitting in North Korea can hack you, just like it happened a few weeks ago with Bybit. With gold, I need to be physically present to actually hack you and get your gold. So if you draw this comparison, it comes out pretty clearly that Bitcoin, from a security standpoint, or crypto, if we want to generalize this, from a security standpoint, is kind of challenging because it has all of the challenges of a bearer instrument combined with all of the challenges of a physical, with a digital item. So it's kind of in a weak spot there. So if you have a little tiny amount of gold, you probably keep it in your wallet. I don't know if you're aware, but there are gold cards that you can actually break. These are cards like the size of a credit card, and they are engraved, and you can actually break it down and get like a smaller piece of metal if you want to. So some people bring those around in their wallets. They actually have it in their pocket. But if you have a bigger amount of gold, you might want to have some sort of safe, right? And you keep it, maybe you have jewelry, you keep it in a safe. If you have a generational wealth in gold, you want a vault, right? You want to deposit somewhere, otherwise you have a huge security issue. So with crypto, it's exactly the same thing. So if you have a small amount, it makes sense to keep it in a wallet, something that you bring with you. You can be robbed it, you can lose it in a wallet, but it doesn't really matter because that's not life-changing. If you have a huge amount of crypto, you need a custody solution, a vault, a system that is super secure that can actually keep those crypto in a controlled environment. So again, how do you actually control crypto? We'll go deeper into this in the next section, but the one thing you need to focus on is that crypto comes from, in a way, borrows a term from cryptography. So computer science diehards will tell you that crypto originally was cryptography, not cryptocurrency. And cryptocurrencies were heavily relying on cryptography. And the key component of cryptography that is used in cryptocurrencies is the signature of the transactions, which is the way in which you actually move cryptocurrencies from one address to another one, right? So the cryptographic keys that control the cryptocurrencies are the core component of how you manage the security of a cryptocurrency. So whoever holds the key has control over the assets. And if you lose the key and there is no backup of any sort, you lose the possibility of moving those assets forever. There's no way that you can recover those assets, which is very, very different from our banking account works, right? If I lose my password, then someone can actually reset it for me and I'll get it back. If I lose the private key to my Bitcoin, that's lost. There's no way I can recover it if I don't have a backup, or if I don't have a more elaborate scheme. We'll go through that in a minute. So understanding how the cryptographic component of the security of crypto works is key to understanding the custody component. So we'll go into that. This is gone. Nobody. Yep. Can I give you the mic?
No.
No.
No, it's better.
It's better for the.
Okay. For.
Okay. Thank you. Just concerning the key, is there any prospect in searching a biometric key?
So the key point of cryptography and the cryptography that controls cryptocurrencies is that the private key should be based off of a very entropic source. So it should be completely random, because if it's not completely random, it's hackable, right? So you could, in theory, you could use as any piece of data as a private key, any source. But if there's not enough entropy in the private key, you can be easily hacked. And a biometric source, it's super hackable, because if I can get a hold of you, I'll get the source of the entropy, I derive the keys, and I control your assets. So I think that would be a bad idea. There are experiments in this space. For example, a cryptocurrency called Orb, if I'm not mistaken, that are based out of the retina. Yeah, but if
biometric sources for the authentication of the person, and that's all. A key has to be completely, it has to be so random that even some random generator are not good. And there are very famous procedure to hack that, but I give you that because on parle pas de ça aujourd'hui.
Yeah, so yeah, we'll see that in a minute. But the key point here is that the private key should be based off super entropic sources, and sometimes you need to take extra care in making sure that the source is truly entropic, truly random, which is very difficult. It's a feat in itself. So we'll go through how a wallet works, because we've talked about wallets, safes, vaults, right? But from a technical standpoint, they're all called wallets, okay? Of course, I'm not talking about a functional wallet. We all have a wallet. I have a wallet to make payments when I go buy a sandwich, and that's a wallet in a way. That's my bank wallet. That's my, I don't know what kind of, if I use PayPal, that's my wallet, right? But that's not the kind of wallet I'm talking about here. I'm talking about a technical wallet, which is something that will allow you to manage the cryptocurrency directly by holding and managing the private keys and the public keys and the addresses that are associated with your Bitcoin. So from a technical standpoint, a wallet is a combination of components, a cryptocurrency wallet. There's a piece of software plus sometimes a piece of hardware that allows you to do a few things. It doesn't necessarily have to be hardware, and it actually doesn't necessarily have to be software as well. You could theoretically do this by hand on a piece of paper, but that's very, very clumsy. So you always have a software. In reality, you always have a software, and sometimes you have a piece of hardware with you. And what those two things will allow you to do is, first of all, to store the private keys, and sometimes generate those private keys. So first of all, a wallet, you could think of it as a keychain in a way. It's a place where you keep all of your private keys, and sometimes it also allows you to generate those private keys. With those private keys, you generate a public key. I don't know if you're familiar with asymmetric cryptography here, but I mean, you can derive a public key, and from the public key, you derive addresses, as many as you want, and the address is the actual place where you actually transfer coins to. Okay. Also, the wallet not only stores and manages private keys, public keys, and addresses, but also manages the signing process that goes with actually executing a Bitcoin transaction. I will talk about Bitcoin all the time here. Let's for a moment assume that this is crypto in general. It's not really true. Some other chains use this different logic, but for a minute, let's assume it's just crypto in general. And also, a wallet will allow you to do a lot more stuff. You get a nice user interface. You get the maybe the exchange rate. You get the euro value of your assets, and so on and so forth. But that's just UI. At the very, very, very core, a wallet is just a store of the keys, a generator of public keys, a generator of addresses, and a signing machine to sign transactions. So this is an example of a private key and a public key. So here you can see a Bitcoin address, right? So this is a very old address, by the way, 19 GB. This is a long string. This is the way it's encoded, and the QR code is just another way of encoding the same address. And this is the secret, which is, again, a private key encoded with a specific format, which is WIF, and this is the same thing below as the QR code. So the idea here is that you have some way of storing that piece of information. The one thing that you need to make sure that you know and you do not give to anyone is the private key, because from the private key you can derive everything, the public key, the address, and so on and so forth. And whoever knows that private key or holds that private key can move the funds without you knowing. So if these were actually true and actually used a wallet, any of you could just take a snapshot here, or maybe the lady who I sent the presentation to could have just a copy of this. And just by having this, she can access, without me knowing it, all my crypto funds that are stored on that wallet. So the security of the private key is the key point here. One thing also that is very important is that when you transform the private key into an address, you go private key, public key, Bitcoin address, you not only generate the address that people can send Bitcoin to, but you also encode in the address a set of conditions that need to be met in order to spend the Bitcoin again. So if I create an address that has specific conditions in it, once the address receives Bitcoin, in order to spend it again, the conditions need to be met. Conditions can be a vast array of setups. Just to make an example, I could decide that any Bitcoin sent to a specific address cannot be spent again before a specific block number, right? So a moment in time. Let's say I can create an address. If you send Bitcoin to that address, you cannot spend from that address again until 2027, okay? That's an example of a condition, which is encoded in the address. So it's you can add conditions at the protocol level to allow a limited, restricted spendability of assets. And this is super important because if you can think of it, you can imagine specific conditions to be met in order to have a higher level of security. Right, so I don't know if you're familiar with some bank branches. If you want to withdraw cash, they cannot give you the cash immediately because the safe has a time lock. So you can withdraw the cash in the branch only for a certain amount, or maybe at a specific time in the day, and that's done exactly to increase the security of the cash. Well, you can think of encoding conditions into the address as something similar. So adding condition of spendability that increase the security. I'll just skip a couple of slides here because it explains a bit about what a mnemonic is. It's just a way of encoding information or encoding the entropy in a different way. But I'll spend a few seconds on this one. So not only you have let's say, when you have a private key, you derive a public address, and then you derive a public key, and then you derive addresses, right? So private key, public key, addresses. But one thing that needs to be kept in mind is that you can create with one private key an almost infinite number of sub-wallets and a huge, 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 almost infinite amount of addresses. So one secret controls potentially a huge number of addresses, which means that you actually have a wallet is actually a tree of addresses connected to a private key. And that private key is derived from the entropy, master seed it's called here, but it's actually entropy. So a truly random piece of information that is the source of the private key. And you can represent this entropy in many different ways. One of the ways this is sometimes represented as is the famous passphrase. You know, the 12 words or the 24 words, depending on the BIP. When they say to control your Bitcoin, to control your crypto, you just need to remember 24 words. I don't know if you ever heard this sentence. So you just need to remember 12 words. Well, those words are just a way in which this entropy is stored, recorded, and from that entropy you can derive the private key, you can derive the sub-wallets, you can derive the addresses, you can sign the transactions, and so on and so forth. That's why if you know the 12 words, you have full control of the assets. I'm almost done with this technical section. Bear with me for a couple more slides. I'll just jump to this one. So where do I keep that piece of information, that entropy, that private key, which is so important to store safely? Well, there's different ways. I could just remember it if I have a very good memory. I could just write it down on a piece of paper. I could maybe, I don't know, encode it somehow in a painting. It doesn't really matter, right? But the most secure way to do this is through very specialized hardware. These are called hardware security modules. You might be familiar with some of these. This is a Ledger. This is a French provider. They're, I think, the most widely used piece of hardware wallet. This is Trezor. This is, I don't remember the name, the Cold Card. So the point is that there is specialized hardware that keeps the key secure. It actually generates the key by keeping it offline. So it creates the key without being connected to the internet, holds the key in the device, will not let the key out in any way. If you send a transaction to the piece of hardware, the hardware will check the transaction validity and sign it, and then send the signed transaction out. But it will not leak in any way the private key. So this is super important because you can hold and store the key in such a way that it doesn't, it's not leaked to anyone. So these are very retail products. Okay, if you imagine like an industrial version of this, these are just like servers that get stored into racks, and these are like more traditional pieces of hardware. This is just a retail version of it. So if the key is so important, why just having one key? If you think of very important stuff, you have more keys usually, right? So your home, maybe, you have one lock and you have many keys, right? Because you want to ensure that many different people can access that apartment, right? That's convenient, but that's not very secure because any of them can actually enter the apartment and anyone can lose the key and the apartment is compromised, right? But that's a so-called multi-signature scheme. So you have many keys, one single lock. Well, when things need to be very secure, you have also the opposite scheme. So you have one single system to be open, but you have many keys that need to be used in combination. So this is a picture. This picture here is from an American nuclear missile launch system, right? And I don't know if you can see this, but these guys are just training, I guess. I hope they're just training, but they have two keys here. So the first guy is holding one key in his right hand, and the other guy is holding another key in his left hand. The two keys are about 3 meters apart, so you cannot actually reach both alone. So you need two people using two different keys. this kind of multi-signature scheme is a 2 out of 2. So you have 2 keys that need to be used both to actually authenticate or sign something. So you can imagine a ton of different schemes here. So you can have 1 out of 2, 3 out of 3. You can set up whatever n of m configuration, right? When you have m, which is smaller than n, so you have, let's say, 2 out of 3 keys, you have a threshold multisig. Okay, so imagine for a second that I have 2 holes here to actually put the key in, but 3 keys. That means that I just need 2 out of 3. Why is that good? Well, that's good for 2 reasons. First, no person alone can actually activate the nuclear missile in this case, or can actually access the crypto. But if one of the keys gets lost, you don't lose control of the funds, right? Because as we said before, if you lose the keys, nobody can help you, right? So if you have a 2 out of 2 and you lose one of the keys, those funds are lost. If you have a 2 out of 3, well, that's easier. So this is a 2 out of 3 setup example. Okay, I'm done with the keys and stuff. I'll just go through how a process works. So we've seen that this is a bearer instrument. We've seen that it's important to hold control of the keys. We've seen that you can encode conditions into the spendability of the address. You've seen also that multi-sig schemes are super secure, and because they're redundant and they are collaborative. So how do we mix everything up to actually obtain secure custody of crypto assets? And that's what we do at CheckSig. That's our job, basically. So what we do usually is actually a ton of things, not just custody, but we provide infrastructure to banks. So the bank has the UX, UI. They have their own, let's say, trading platform in their banking app, and we provide the access to the market. We provide the custody. We also provide the compliance. So we provide everything a bank needs. But again, the custody is the core component. Because not only customers need to actually buy the asset, they actually need to make sure that it's actually well protected, right? And when a bank is providing this service, well, of course, the bank has, their reputation at stake. So you cannot afford to lose assets of your clients. So that's what we do, the protection, the custody. We provide processes and technology, and then the bank will just build their own products, let's say trading, loans, whatever they want to do, proof of stake, whatever, and then they have the relationship. What we do is the custody component, and I have a video here because that's I think better than just walking you through. I don't know if the audio is working here. Not sure. We'll see. Yeah. No. It's just not sure I can do this by myself here. It's just a YouTube video available here. No, with the advertisements, I fear, yeah. Unless you have a YouTube premium account, which is quite. I don't know if it's not working. I'll just send you the presentation afterwards. You can take a look at it. I'll just go through it on a slide. If we can go back to presentation mode. Oh, I wish I had a laptop here right now. It's okay. Just if you can actually put this back into broad presentation mode. No, I'll just go get it. I'll do it. Nope. No. Maybe on that seat. That's the one. Yeah. Thank you. Yep. No, I'm just trying to put it back into presentation mode, but it's in French, and I don't speak French. Please, just full screen mode. I don't know which one it is. Okay. You authorize it, whatever. Sì, autorizza. YouTube. Fantastico, va. We have it. Let's try. Yeah, accept whatever Google is trying to. Just enjoy the advertising here and audio. Yeah. No, I'll just explain it that myself. No worries. So whenever you have a small amount of Bitcoin, of course you will put it in a wallet, right? And I was just mentioning earlier. But whenever you have a large amount of Bitcoin or crypto, you want a safe vault. So when our clients deposit their Bitcoin, what they actually do is they deposit in a multi-layer system. The deepest system, which is the most secure, it's a frozen vault where all of the Bitcoin get deposited, right? But the key point here is not the deposit, is how we actually move the assets out of that vault, which is the difficult part. Whenever the customer asks for a withdrawal, we open that vault system with a multi-sig setup. We have 2 keys ourselves out of 3, so 2 out of 3. And we have a federation of external agents which are independent from our company, and they just double check whatever we do. They check whenever we ask for a withdrawal. There are 5 federation agents, and they need to sign, 3 of them need to sign to actually authorize the transaction. So of course they control, they double check, they see that we're not actually withdrawing more than we should, they double check that there's no attack ongoing, and when they're convinced, they co-sign with us. So we authorized and they co-sign. So it's a 2 out of 3 and 3 out of 5, and when all the keys turn, you actually move the Bitcoin, but they cannot go anywhere. They can only go to a second layer, which is a cold vault. So it's sort of an elevator, right? The Bitcoin can only go out passing through this intermediate layer, and we have a time lock here. I was mentioning before that you can add spendability conditions. We have spendability condition that is a certain number of days need to pass in order to accidentally hit something here. A few specific number of days need to pass in order to actually move the Bitcoin. Why that? Because in this way, we can actually double check that the transaction is legit. I'm not talking about 10,000 euro here, talking about tens of millions euro. So that's the kind of security you want to have. I mean, it takes some time to take gold out of Fort Knox. There's a reason why, and this is the kind of thing we do. So again, frozen vault, we have a multi-sig setup, we have a cold vault, a few days need to pass, then we authorize with other keys, 2 out of 3. And in all of the process, we have insurance coverage and we have audits to double check all of the setup. The protocol is transparent. So in cryptography in general, the obscurity is not a good thing. If you hide how your system works, that's not a good sign. You want the whole world to know how the system works to prove that it's secure so that there's no way to attack it. This is just a staple in cryptography, right? That's all of the cryptographic setups and systems are designed in this way, and we do the same. And we have SOC 1, SOC 2 attestations, and I'll go through that in a second. Grazie mille. We can go back to the full screen presentation if we can actually manage to do it. Can any of you help us put it in full screen mode? Okay, let's see if I can. Yeah, I can just turn the slides. Well, in any case, it's a trade-off, some sort of intermediate way. Yeah. So this is the way our custody works, but this is the setup and how it works. So again, we have a frozen vault. We have a multi-sig setup here. So 2 out of 3 authorization agents, 3 out of 5 federation agents. You can just put it. Yeah, but it's okay. And then we have a call layer, and then we have a time lock, so a delay in time, and then we have another signature. You have the funds sent out to the client. Why does it have to be so complicated, right? So basically, this is a trade-off. You have a trade-off between how complex it is to access the assets and how secure they are, in a way, right? And this specific setup is the trade-off that we use for ourselves. But of course, you can actually tweak the parameters of this. You can change the number of keys. You can change the number of key holders. You can decide who holds the keys. You can have time locks. You can change the duration of the time locks. You can whitelist some addresses to skip the cold vault. You can actually have hierarchical accounts. Of course, you can have plenty of customizations, right? So what I'm showing you, what I'm sharing with you is the way we have configured our own system to use it ourselves. We have in custody about 1,200 Bitcoin right now. So that's enough to justify this kind of complexity. So it's about 110 million euro. Yeah.
When you move your bitcoins or your assets between the frozen layer and the cold layer,
Yep.
is it on chain or off chain?
Everything is on chain. Everything is on chain here. So yeah, let me just address this one for a second. So if I have a client deposit here in the frozen vault, I can if the client asks to withdraw it, it needs to go through this process. If the client asks to credit those Bitcoin to another client, which is already our client, I can move those funds from an accounting point of view off chain. But if it's a withdrawal, I will need to actually move it on chain.
Basically, you say that your solution is an open source software that we can download and use ourselves and customize all the parameters.
No, it's not open source. It's public. So you know how it works.
Because transactions are on chain.
Transactions are on chain. You can actually double check it, and I will go through the transactions in a second. So we'll see our actual proof of reserves. The software is not open source. We have 2 patents on this, but the way it works, the process is public.
And also, if I can, because those are Bitcoin transactions. Also, if I can, because those are Bitcoin transactions, the Bitcoin script that is the native Bitcoin code is available for inspection on chain.
Yeah. So you can actually see that it's a multi-sig setup, how it was built. Yeah.
The warranties that you have for your clients. I don't know if it is included in the package.
Okay. A few slides forward, and I'll go through that. So one issue you have with crypto in general is that when a client deposits crypto in you and uses you as a company, as a custodian, how can the client make sure that the funds are actually there? So when you deposit something somewhere, you want to make sure that it's still there. It hasn't been lost or stolen or lent to someone, right? So this is what we do with proof of reserves. Proof of reserves is a process that demonstrates that the funds, the cryptocurrencies that have been deposited by our clients are actually there, and we have full control over those. So proof of reserves is a non-chain feature of our custody protocol. Whenever we move the assets from the frozen vault That's done on chain. Sometimes we just move the assets from the frozen vault back to the frozen vault. It's just like moving the assets from and to the same address, just to prove to the world that we have full control of those assets. We have not lost the keys. We have not lost the quorums of the multi-signature setup. We have not lent those assets to someone else. So we are fully in control of the assets. And the assets are actually there. Anyone can see how much we have in custody. It's actually on our website. You will see in a second. So this is called proof of reserves. That's something we do. We have actually invented this. We are still the only custodian to do this. There's a few exchanges who do this, but not any custodian. We're the only one globally. If you add proof of liabilities to proof of reserves, you get proof of solvency. So proof of reserves will show you how much we have in the vault. Proof of liabilities will prove how much we owe to our clients. If the two things match, we're solvent. So we are provably solvent. By design, we cannot run any fractional reserve scheme. If we lose the assets, the entire world will know. What will happen in that case? We'll get to that in a second. But again, this is the way we have designed the system to make it the most transparent setup possible, so that you actually can trust us to hold your assets in a guaranteed way. It's actually at protocol level. For the liabilities, you mean? For the reserves, we have everything at protocol level. So it's a cryptography-based setup. You can go on the blockchain and see the balance, the history. This is our last proof of reserves transaction. You can see this is our funds. This is the consolidation of user funds, deposits, and this is the one big output you see here. It's about, it's not here, but it's about 1,000 Bitcoin. Yeah. 1,164, and this is the historical balance of that address. So this is the actual amount of Bitcoin that we have in custody since the beginning of time, actually. So 2019.
I have a question which is not technical.
Yeah.
I don't know it works. I just want to know, do you have any specific authorization to be custodian as PSAN or CASP or VASP, whatever?
Yeah. So yeah, we are in Italy. We're based out of Italy, and we have a company in Switzerland. So the Italian company is authorized to operate under the Italian law. We are registered at OAM, which is a local registry of crypto asset service providers. We are also a MiCA entity, a MiCA candidate entity. So the Italian authorities are kind of slow. They have not released any license yet, but we have already submitted. Yeah, but it's super slow. But we have submitted everything already. We've been talking with them since November. And then in Switzerland, our Swiss branch is authorized under FINMA. Yeah. It's not MiCA because it's just out of the European Union. But yeah, we can serve the entirety of Europe right now already. So if we have foreign customers already. Yeah. So I'm getting to the conclusion. Is this enough? Is this enough? So is the technology and the process enough? And the answer, it's not. It's not. You also need the traditional safeguards that the bank would have. What are those? The fact that the assets are segregated. So our own assets, our company assets, and our client assets are segregated from an operational point of view, but also from a contractual point of view. So our creditors cannot get our clients' assets. We have external audits. We have SOC 1, SOC 2 attestation type 2 from Deloitte. We have insurance coverage. So if something goes wrong, should anything go wrong, we are covered. So the assets are covered. And of course, we have disaster recovery, business continuity procedures, and so on and so forth. The insurance coverage, someone was asking before about that. So the insurance coverage covers internal fraud. So when Ferdinand and I will happily escape to some tropical destination, no worries. So the internal fraud is covered, external hacking as well. And also part of our assets are actually on exchanges to allow for the trading component. So should an exchange go south, then that's covered as well. the insurance coverage is with Munich Re. And SOC attestations, again, that's Deloitte. We have SOC 1 Type 2 and SOC 2 Type 2, so very extensive audit of our processes. Again, that's exactly what a depository bank would do, right? If you think about this in a more traditional way, this is some sort of mix between a vault of a bank and a depository bank, right? So we kind of have everything that covers both these kind of operational issues. And that's it. Well, that's me. If you want to reach out or have any questions, happy to take them right now or later on.
Thank you very much. And I'm quite worried about the timing, so I suggest to postpone any question to the
with a drink
to the end. No,
okay.
Oh yeah, with the glass
with
mic.
a drink.
And I leave the floor to Ferdinando.
Thank you. And
yes. So my first quick question will be about the first talk. So, like for your business, and I mean, and your competition, but people who are on the same sector as you and CheckSig, how critical is the need for genuine random number generator? Like,
I guess maybe Ferdinando can chip in on that, but I mean, our business basically, if you want to super simplify it, is to devise a way to securely manage private keys, right? And with regards to that, I mean, we basically rely on the private key generation procedures that are the most secure on the market right now, which are market standards. So I think the issue of generating true random numbers is key to the entire sector of cryptography, not just Bitcoin. I mean, if we have an issue there, I mean, your traditional bank account security is at risk, not just Bitcoin or CheckSig.
But the good news is that a roll of the dice is good enough and will be always good enough, even when with quantum computing. Okay, so
yeah, you just need to roll the dice 256 times or more, and the more the better. Yeah.
But if I have like 256 dice, then
yeah,
then it's good. Okay, and so short second question: how would your proposal of how would your whole new money proposal work in an international context in which like you could imagine that every central bank between like 3 or 4 countries would have this system? Have you thought of balancing of balancing system to guarantee some compatibility within?
No, I'm very, I do trust markets and market efficiency. That's it. That's why I don't think that central bankers will never get this. Forget about that. Government central banks will not. There will be private people doing that. Basically, in 2014, when I discovered Bitcoin, the right day, it was February 13. I was in Berlin at a conference, and by my side, there was Giancarlo De Vasini, which is one of the founders of Tether. At the time, was no one. Okay, Tether, for those who doesn't know, it's the most successful crypto experiments after Bitcoin, worth $140 trillion today, and the most successful stable coin. I've been discussing this idea with Giancarlo, and Giancarlo, basically Tether is the implementation of this idea with stability to the dollar, okay? They did it, I didn't. Why? I was scared. Because the founders of eGold and Liberty Dollar were all arrested. And so I felt like, wow, this is dangerous. They were braver than me, and they've been successful so far. They just didn't know, or they might be arrested in future. No, maybe not anymore, I don't know. whatever, I think now that technology is maturing because, you know, their implementation is not algorithmic. And as a matter of fact, many or most of the flows and the issues they had with the New York attorney and the settlement they had or about missing assets, baked assets, is about that project not being algorithmic. But in a way, if you think about the proof for reserves of CheckSig, the transparency of CheckSig custody, you can see that in a way as a prerequisite for issuing private money. If I want to issue my Ametrano coin, and you will not trust me, and you're right in not trusting me, but if I can prove Bitcoin reserves and algorithmic setup, then you will have only to trust my reference basket and the way I measure it. That's it. Okay? That will be much, much easier. So I think that going forward, we will see a lot of competition on monetary proposals from private entities. Last but not least, Facebook has tried to issue his own coin a few years ago, but you know, Bruno Le Maire, he said that monetary sovereignty is something the private enterprise has not to play with. I would ask him why, because I don't think that is the case at all. But you see the mindset, the approach of the establishment right now.
You partially answered, but actually that was my question. Basically, your proposal was partially implemented in what we call algorithmic stablecoin on Ethereum, like DAI or etc., except that they use Ethereum at the beginning, not now, but they used a reserve of Ethereum, except of Bitcoin. But we agree, it's basically that.
DAI is probably the best one from the theoretical point of view. Okay.
I mean, at the beginning, not now, because now they use USDC. So
sorry?
Now they use USDC.
Yes, now they use USDC, so it's not anymore. And but I mean, the idea, it's easy enough because this is. If you go into that rabbit hole of monetary thinking, you discover that people have been thinking about this idea in very different form. Irving Fisher was advocating for a compensated dollar. That is a US dollar that will not have a fixed exchange with gold, but a variable exchange. In the 30s, 40s, he could not do that because there were gold US dollars around, and those could not be, you know, changed in the equivalent amount of gold. These days we can do that. So the only point is about the quality of reserves, the guarantees that that is not discretionary, and so the reserve asset bank will always redeem at the promised level until depleting the reserves, and doing that on a genuinely algorithmic way, because in my opinion, this, as Tether is proving, this idea is so powerful that it will be really disruptive for government money. And so you have to take into account some kind of backlash when that will happen. And so it's better to be shielded by algorithms, artificial intelligence, and not corporation or you know, natural people, natural person administering such a system.
Just maybe just a remark. I mean, I appreciated a lot the way in which you try to stabilize the prices by introducing some compensation reserve mechanism. Have you already some white paper or some research paper written on that, or for the moment, okay?
Yes, I do. IAC Money is from 2014. Mm-hmm. Dual Asset Ledger is from 2016.
So in the previous one that you mentioned,
the IAC Money, I was thinking about rebasing Bitcoin. Yeah. That I was naive, and then I realized that that was not really doable, and not even something that you should aim for, because basically a much stronger setup is available if you have some good, reliable gold, which is completely inelastic. Okay, so let's keep Bitcoin as it is, and let's move to some kind of dual asset ledger. And I think that one more aspect is that we are used to use just one kind of coin. We all use euro. Yes, marginally maybe we use Swiss franc or dollars, but most of us in our day-by-day life we use one coin. Going forward, we will have many multiple coins available, and we will do our asset liability management. How many what coin I do need? Well, depends on how much bread my family use and how many oil coins I need. Well, if I'm still using a fuel-powered car, okay, and so you can have your own asset liability management. People will be using multiple coins.
So
that would mean that the aspect is the basket choice.
Absolutely. The competition is about the basket selection. You might be a
and
better
then you could have the central bank wanting to impose their money in the basket, maybe in a reference.
I'm not against states and government.
No.
You know, I'm not. I'm not an anarchist.
Yeah.
What I would love is for government money to get some proper competition. Okay.
Yeah.
So that central bankers must strive for some real public interest, and then if you prefer to use whatever else, you can do that. But you know, there will be market competition, and you might have a better idea of what are relevant, maybe you can propose a better reference basket, most relevant for real economic
but even these baskets can change during the time.
Absolutely.
So, guys, at 8 p.m. we are outside.
So it's time to drink.
It's time to thank all the speakers, so Michele and Ferdinando, for this very, very nice talks. And it's time for champagne or something else.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.